Hello, Global Issues class. Dr. Maiden here, coming to you live. Enjoying my spring break. I hope you guys are enjoying your spring break. And taken some time out. I went on safari this morning and okay, wait, hold on. Okay, no, I told you couldn't come. No, 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 stop it. Stop. I told you couldn't be in the video. Will you just, all right, hold please. Okay, sorry about that, class. Here with a content video for you today. This is going back to before spring break. We are picking up with Global Issues 4.5. That's going to be Proliferation of Weapons of Mass Destruction. So in your reading, this is BSO Chapter 26. Brief content lecture here about proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Okay. So when we're talking about what is a WMD, a weapon of mass destruction, there's three classes of weapons of mass destruction. We have chemical, biological, and radioactive, or in most cases we think of nuclear, right? Chemical, biological, nuclear weapon. The idea with these types of weapons is they are capable of causing widespread death and destruction. So if you think of something like a missile that might be able to do a very targeted strike and take out a building or even a city block, the expectation with a weapon of mass destruction is right there in the title that you are causing mass destruction, widespread destruction. So in the case of the nuclear weapons that have been used to date, they flattened entire city centers, okay? Entire city centers demolished, destroyed, everything that was in them. Mass destruction. So typically the target, if we're thinking, because some of these are chemical, some of these are biological, obviously a chemical weapon isn't going to have the same type of mass destruction because the target isn't natural structures or human-made structures like buildings or roads. So humans in and of themselves can be the targets, and it can be a weapon of mass destruction. That's what we're looking at in the case of something like a chemical weapon. The biosphere can become the target with something like a biological weapon if we are making it so that the air is toxic to breathe, if we're making it so that we're destroying the ability for plants to grow. I'll talk about some of those examples in a couple of slides. The biosphere itself, the environment, can become the thing that is the target of a weapon of mass destruction. Okay? This term WMD, it was first coined in 1937 by the Archbishop of Canterbury, and he was reflecting on what was happening, particularly the aerial bombing that was happening in the 1930s in Guernica in Spain. The conflict that was happening in Spain, maybe you've seen before the very famous Picasso painting that is titled Guernica, right, that it's talking about what war looks like from an abstract perspective. The U.S. military definition has changed a little bit, right? We're moving forward in time. That's the 1930s. U.S. military definition, it's on the slide there. Chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear weapons capable of high order of destruction or causing mass casualties. They have this caveat, though. It excludes the means of transporting or propelling the weapon, where such means is separable and divisible from the weapon. So here think of something like a nuclear submarine that might run on nuclear energy, but it also can carry a nuclear warhead and it can launch it. So the submarine or the airplane that would deliver it, that is not a WMD. It's just the tool that is used to launch or to drop a WMD, okay? So there's a separation there from the weapon itself to the thing that it might be clicked onto or shot out of, okay? Just a little bit of clarity there that not everything is a WMD. It may be launching a WMD, okay? So we're going to start here with nuclear weapons. That's probably what people are most familiar with. They've maybe researched this before. And the thing to point out here is the idea that nuclear technology is dual use. We say the term dual use. So it's the idea that it is not only a form of energy, reliable energy, largely clean energy, cleaner than coal. You can use it as energy to create electricity, but you can also weaponize it. All right. In history today, nuclear weapons have only been used twice in active combat. And I'd love for you to comment down below if you know when they were used, where they were used, by whom. Who is the only country to use them, when and where? Comment down below if you know, and let's see what answers we get. While nuclear technology has spread, since 1945, it has spread all around the world. So again, when we're saying nuclear technology, we're not necessarily saying weapons. Nuclear technology can be the creation of nuclear plants to provide something like electricity. Okay, nuclear technology has spread around the world, but the proliferation of weapons, nuclear weapons, has not. And that's what we're going to look at in a couple of slides here in this lecture, of the impact of non-proliferation and deterrence in limiting the number of countries that actually have an active nuclear weapons program. Okay, so largely we've talked about this, I think, in a couple of different lectures. Cold War experience being largely one of nuclear deterrence. All right, so it's the idea that we were in a arms race to build up our stocks of nuclear weapons, and yet, knowing that the USSR had them and the US had them, we were deterring each other from using them, with the idea being that it would be mutually assured destruction, MAD, mutually assured destruction. If I use them on you, you know I'll use them back, and we'll all just burn the earth together. Okay, so we had a deterrence effort that was happening. At this point in time, so we're looking at 2020, at this point in time, 9 states are thought to possess nuclear weapons. And I'm going to flash the map up now so we can see it. These are the 9 states that we understand do have nuclear weapons. So you can see the numbers here. If you compare, obviously, what are the standouts? US, Russia. US, Russia, no comparison. The next closest comparison is France with 300, but we have over 6,000 nuclear weapons, okay? So you can see on this picture here, it's saying that it's a combined total of nearly 14,000 nuclear warheads. More than 90% are in the US and Russia. Approximately 9,500 are in military service. The rest, and this is an important point, notice that on the picture, the rest are awaiting dismantlement, okay? So what we're saying here is that even though we have all these weapons, many of them are going to be dismantled. And we're going to talk about that in a minute as well. So the focus here then, we're talking about non-proliferation. If we have all these weapons in the US and former USSR, now Russia, that are going forward for dismantling, what are we talking about? And we're talking about this thing called non-proliferation. So there are 2 forms, the bunny ears, 2 forms of nuclear non-proliferation. There's horizontal, and there's vertical proliferation. So horizontal proliferation is the spread of nuclear weapons to new countries, and vertical proliferation is the increase in size of existing arsenals. So the US was engaged very actively in vertical proliferation. We can see that we have over 6,000, okay? Whereas when we're looking back at that map, efforts at horizontal proliferation, we're seeing where countries like Israel, Pakistan, India, China, North Korea were also able to establish programs where they either were able to weaponize uranium on their own, or they were able to access technology and have people weaponize it for them, and they bought it, and they were able to create nuclear weapons. All right. So starting in 1957, we had what we called the International Atomic Energy Agency. This was founded by the United Nations. It's the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency. By 1963, US, USSR, and UK signed a partial test ban treaty. Interesting things have happened. By 1967, Latin America became the first geographic zone to actually establish themselves as nuclear free. They will not ever engage in the enriching of uranium to the point that it can be used in a nuclear weapon. Latin America was the first. And since then, we have had several additional treaties all around the world. This is where we're talking about non-proliferation now. Several treaties around the world. Africa has done one. Southeast Asia, I believe, has done one, focusing on this idea that we will never enrich uranium to the point of creating nuclear weapons. That's our attempt at non-proliferation. Okay. By 1970, then, we had the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty signed. So 1945, we have the event where two are used in public in a time of war, and all of these escalating efforts to stop the proliferation of these weapons, both horizontal and vertical proliferation. So the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, has three pillars. The first focus, obviously, non-proliferation. Countries that do not have it will not get it. That is non-proliferation. Step 2, eventual disarmament. Countries that do have it, that's the case, going back to that map, I'll flash it up again. That's the case of countries like the US and former USSR agreeing to disarm existing warheads. The last piece of this, then, is the peaceful use of nuclear technology, nuclear energy. So the idea that, yes, countries like Japan, right? Japan does not have an offensive force. That was part of the treaty that they signed, the peace treaty, the surrender treaty at the end of World War II. We are technically their military. So they engage in nuclear energy usage, but it's not weaponized nuclear energy. So countries all around the world can prosper using nuclear energy. They just cannot weaponize it. So that's the third piece, peaceful use of this as an energy source. All right. So I'm going to flash another map up here, or not a map, a graph, so that you can kind of see stockpiles since 1962 and just how impactful these different treaties have been. Going back to our international law lecture, really, we talked a lot about in the international law lecture of what is the impact? Do these actually have any influence? What's the difference if no one is actually participating in these treaties? What we can see here is a really invested interest, at least by the US and Russia, to commit to disarmament. So you can see from the first NPT in 1968, we had a couple of SALT treaties, START treaties. These are all acronyms, of course, right? Everything is an acronym. But you can really see a steep cut in active and inactive nuclear warhead stockpiles. So in that sense, these treaties are working at bringing those numbers of active warheads down. Okay. So we're going to stop there with nuclear weapons. I've got a video. I'm linking it. You should be able to see it. I'm going to link it here. If you go to the module page, it's going to be video number 1. It's called Nuclear Weapons. That's how I've titled it on the slide. And then you'll be able to link right out to it from the module page. It's an excellent video, very, very timely. It's looking at what could happen or what would happen if we had a nuclear war today, right, or within the next 10 years. So it's about a 5-minute video. Please check it out. It is very good. It gives you some good additional information. All right, we're going to come back in a second and we're going to talk about chemical weapons and biological weapons. But first, we're going to have a brief note from our sponsors. This video is brought to you by Häagen-Dazs. Expensive AF, but delicious. All right, so hopefully you got to watch the nuclear weapons video, and we're going to switch now. We're going to talk very briefly about chemical weapons, and then we're going to talk about biological weapons. So chemical weapons, these are chemicals that are designed specifically to kill, injure, or temporarily incapacitate individuals, humans, okay? The challenge with chemical weapons, when you compare it to something like nuclear energy, weaponizing nuclear energy, that is an incredibly difficult process. The enriching of uranium is incredibly difficult. You have to know what you're doing. You have to have the equipment to do it. It is a very rigorous process, very high skill level involved in the enriching of uranium to create nuclear weapons. You compare that to something like chemical weapons. I mean, who's watched Breaking Bad, right? All these materials are widely available, commercially available. You can go to any country, any supermarket. You can go to Publix and pick up a lot of the things that you would need to create an effective chemical weapon. And that makes this scary in the world where we're looking at non-state actors, the rise in non-state actors, the rise in just individuals with a grudge that are wanting to go and make these types of weapons, and they can because everything is very readily accessible. With the chemical weapons, we talk in terms of agents. So there are different types of agents that you can create. So you might have a blister agent, a nerve agent, a blood agent, or a choking agent. So some examples you might have heard of before, something like chlorine gas. Chlorine gas is a choking agent. It stops you from being able to breathe. Sarin gas then is a nerve agent, completely incapacitating you. Mustard gas, this was what was used largely in World War I. Mustard gas, World War I, that's a blistering agent. So if you've ever seen footage or seen pictures of people that have survived mustard gas attacks, they'll have blisters that erupt all over their skin, their face, their neck. Okay. Then even things like tear gas, pepper spray, those are also forms of choking agent that are meant to incapacitate you. So we've seen all over the US, this is something that police will largely use when they're dealing with protests, things like that. That is a form of chemical weapon, tear gas, pepper spray. Since 1993, we have had a chemical weapons convention, again, a UN convention, chemical weapons convention, that has banned the use of chemical weapons. Obviously, we know in particular with things like tear gas and pepper spray, these are still used. These are still readily available, right? You can get a little one to have in your purse to spray. These are still available. They're not as devastating compared to some of these other chemical weapons, but they are technically incapacitating someone, incapacitating them in terms of their ability to breathe, all right? We have another video here that you can watch. It's video number 2. Again, it'll be linked down below, and it's going to be on the module page. This is an overview of chemical weapons. Take a look at it. It's very interesting. It provides a lot of historical overview of this particular topic. All right, and we will come back again, take a look at that. We'll come back and we'll finish quickly with biological weapons. All right, so biological weapons, the last one we want to talk about here. This is the use of bacteria, bacterial toxins, fungi, or viruses, again, to kill or incapacitate. Sometimes we call this germ warfare. What's interesting here is that the humans do not have to be the only target. In fact, several times throughout history, humans were not the target of this. So the thing that makes bioweapons very scary is that they reproduce and or replicate within host victims. So you can think of things like anthrax, smallpox, botulism, glanders. You can Google some of these to see what the difference are with them. I can never pronounce it. Tularemia. It's called something to do with rabbits, right? Oh, I'm drawing a blank. That's right. First recorded use from a Hittite text, 1500s, spread from rabbits, but it impacted people, very devastating. Plants and animals can also be targeted with biological weapons. So one example would be things like throughout the course of history, doing something like salting fields, right? So going in, taking over a territory and salting the fields. This creating a salinated environment restricts the ability for animals to eat grass, for you to be able to grow things in that grass. Okay, so this can be a weapon of warfare, going over and taking over lands and salting the fields. That is a form of biological warfare. All right. Something like 1763, the British using smallpox on purpose as a weapon against the Native Americans. So knowing that people were infected, what they did, it was a siege of a fort. They were taking people that were infected by smallpox, launching their bodies over the wall of the fort, hoping to get the people inside infected because they couldn't get them out to bury them, right? So hoping that they would create an instance of biological warfare and get other people ill as well. By 1972, same thing with chemical and nuclear, we had a convention. The UN loves to do this, they're always doing conventions. So we did a biological weapons convention that again was meant to limit, if not completely, abolish the use of biological weapons in times of war. Right. Third video that you can watch then, 3 minutes, very quick. It's an overview of the bio threat. It's linked down below. You can find it on the module page. Take a look at it, peruse at your leisure, and rather than do some discussion questions here, because I'm already to 20 minutes, I'm going to stop now. And if you have questions, if you have comments, you can link down below. I will check those out. And then please go and do the quiz, and I will provide a discussion question there and answer that. You'll answer your 3 general questions, and then you'll answer the quiz, the discussion question. All right. So I hope you guys have a great day. Stay tuned for the next lecture.